It's 12:25 a.m. and my friends and I just finished a second round of Chinatown, which is an incredible game. It's our first time playing it, and I'm sure I'll be alright about it eventually. It's basically just 4 hours of yelling and screaming at each other while you try to make ridiculous deals. But in any case, that's really just a tangent to my little follow-up to the review I sent out today about Arena the Contest. This over here is Arena the Contest. It's an incredibly visually appealing game because of those walls and that 3D element going on that you can see over here. The whole setup just looks very, very immersive with those walls. It's really not a lot going on there. It's just these things over here, these little walls over here, they're just so well done and such a simple little extra bit to the game, but it really just adds a lot to it. No idea where that was. But yeah, Arena the Contest is a game that completely was not on my radar at all. I got it as a trade when I backed Brook City. I got Brook City and then immediately had buyer's remorse, realizing that it shared the same system as Street Masters, and I really just preferred the idea of Street Masters, not that I've played it yet. And so I ended up deciding to go for a trade on Brook City while it was still hot in the market. And while I wasn't able to sell it, which is what I was initially trying to do, I did get someone who offered me a trade for Arena the Contest. Arena the Contest is a game that I basically avoided Arena the Contest because when I first saw it, it looked like it was primarily a 4v4 head-to-head combat game, and our game group barely gets 4 or 5 players these days, let alone 8. And so even if it was, even if you just both control a bunch of characters, even a 4v4 combat game just didn't seem like something that would hit the table a lot with our current group. So I decided to pass on it when I saw the Kickstarter. But when somebody offered me a trade for Brook City, I was like, what the heck, let's go for it. Let's see, maybe it'll actually be something different. I got it, I unboxed it. It all looked pretty like they usually do, and then I put it away and we'll see what happens. I ended up seeing a significant number of people start to post pictures of it playing with looking like that. And then as well as that, it just lots of commentary, not on the player versus player arena mode, but just people seem to be really engaged in the co-op mode. When I had looked at the Kickstarter, the co-op, it seemed like an afterthought, like, oh, by the way, this 8-player head-to-head game, you can also play a co-op. But everyone that I was seeing commenting it was only commenting on the co-op and solo, which already makes it a lot more accessible and easier to get to the table if I can just pull it out and play by myself, or pull it out and play with my wife or one of my friends, instead of devoting a game night game to it. So because of that, I decided to pull it out in the end. I opened it up, looked at the 6-page pamphlet that supposedly covers the 40-page worth of rules. I was a little skeptical, but it seemed to do an incredible job doing so. I read the 6 pages, got it all set up, a few quick glances at various sections of the rules, and we were good to go. And it's just incredibly accessible. The game, basically, every character just has a hero card. I don't know if this is focusing well, but yeah, let's see if we can get that to auto adjust. I don't know. Either way, every character basically has a hero sheet with their various stats. So we have over here their health, their basic attack, their defense, and their movement, combined with 2 abilities up here that they can use every round, and then 2 abilities that are one-time use only. Then on your turn, your heroes basically get to move. They get a move action where they move their movement stat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and moving diagonally is allowed. And then they get a primary action, and a primary action will usually be an attack, but it could be something else. It could be related to the game itself. It could be related to, so for instance, I don't know how well I'll be able to get this over here, but over here, I don't know if you can see, there's a little lever. So in this mission, we had to open up the gate by having this lever, and that lever over there opened within 2 consecutive prime actions. But that's basically the main play. So you get your guys go, taking your movement followed by an attack. Then once all your team has gone, the enemy team takes their movement and attack. Rinse and repeat until you've either won or lost. It's really, really that simple. If I was actually aiming to teach it, it would be maybe another 5 to 6 minutes of rules covering the various nuances, and then we'd be good to go. We'd be in the game and giving it a shot. I read those rules, was very skeptical, played the first game, and it just pulled me in. The rules were incredibly simple, and that led me to believe that they would not be a very engaging game. But there's something fun about just lining up your characters' abilities, their actions, and getting some pretty solid things. Like right here, again, looking over here, that line of characters over here, the reason these guys are all lined up is because we were lining the archer. We were lining the archer up for one of her special abilities is shooting in a direct line, hitting all enemies and dealing just a ton of damage in a straight line. And so we spent a bit of our actions from the various teams to get them lined up, and that last shot was basically the way we won the game. We got in he used her special ability, we got in a power shot, we ended up using another special ability to get back her special ability. It's the way these abilities interplay with each other is what makes this game so much fun. It's not an amazingly deep game, it's not an amazingly complicated game. It's really just about getting unique characters with abilities that actually matter, abilities that actually have nuance. This is not Massive Darkness, and I say this as someone who likes Massive Darkness, but this is not Massive Darkness where every single ability is, figuring out a way for you to roll more dice or fewer dice with small modifiers. Every single ability has a nuance, whether it's this ability attacks 1 square away, that ability attacks 2 squares away, how much damage they do, the various stats that they give to yourself and to others. Your specials tend to be particularly incredible, dealing with this one does 25 damage and you may immediately move up to 7 squares. You may move the target 7 squares to a square adjacent to you. That may not sound like a lot, but in this game that's incredible, the way you can just move someone across the board and completely shift the board state. Or his other ability, Creeping Darkness, where his special basically involves canceling someone else's attack and doing 16 damage back. When you add up the way all these abilities interplay and end up just delivering massive amounts of feeling like a badass. That's really what the game comes down to. You play the game, you go through the motions, go through the sequence, and then suddenly you have a turn where you line up, enemies just spawned, and you line up a whole bunch of attacks and strikes against the enemies in a way that just makes you feel like you really did something, that you really combined your abilities and took out the enemies. I've played this game twice so far. The first game was again, I walked in thinking it'd be a cakewalk, and I got soundly destroyed. I barely made it to the final boss, and it got wiped out, let alone actually, really fighting with the final boss. That led me to be a lot more cautious walking into my second game, and the second game I would say leaned a little bit towards a little bit the easy side. We won, and it happens to be 2 of our characters died, 2 of our 4 characters died, but they died in the last round, and I think we had it pretty much in control. We knew what we were doing, and we had a fairly good control of the board games, of the game state when they died. We knew what we were doing, and we were fine dying. I would say that I hope the other levels do get more difficult, but I'm not too worried. There are other, like for instance, to give an example, there's an optional extra level of quest we could have done that I specifically didn't because I got beaten in the first round. But we could have done that, and that would have made the game even significantly harder. And again, to me, I want to look back at the campaign and go over it, but my impression really was that solo and co-op was a complete afterthought. Not literally an afterthought, but it's secondary to the PvP mode. It does seem, they just announced a second Kickstarter, well, not just announced, they've been working on a second Kickstarter, and they put up the Kickstarter draft, and they've been announcing more information, and it seems like they're doubling down on that campaign and solo co-op mode. It seems like the focus of the second Kickstarter is significantly more focused on the campaign, on the story, on the co-op, and much less so on the PvP. I don't know if that was always planned that way, if that's a response to the high level of praise and recognition and acceptance that the co-op has gotten, but I'm definitely looking forward to it. The one thing I will say, actually, there's a few criticisms that I do have of the game. I don't know how well this can focus. Let's see. Don't know. I'm still new to this camera stuff, so bear with me while I desperately try to figure out whether this will focus. It doesn't look like it's gonna zoom in at all. But this game, while being incredibly fun and engaging, has some of the lower quality minis I've seen, considering the year we're in and the state of board gaming, and how nowadays being on Kickstarter with a board game, it's all about the minis. I mean, the gameplay is important, but I think I was watching a video with Z Garcia from the Dice Tower today when he said you could have the most intelligent, incredible game on the planet, but basically show the minis first, and then somewhere in a small paragraph talk about how awesome your game is. And that is the truth, unfortunately. I mean, a good game is just as important as a good minis on Kickstarter right now. This game does not have good minis. It has an incredible game. The minis are tolerable. Now, don't get me wrong, I will take a tolerable mini with a good game over good minis with a bad game any day of the week. But, and this is a big but, on Kickstarter, with the new Kickstarter they'll be announcing, I think it's early February 4th maybe, they basically said that if you pledge, you will be getting the minis from the base game redone. They're redoing their entire minis, both with new sculpts and new prints. They're using the company that Awakened Realms uses, that Cool Mini or Not uses. They're using a new company, an established, better company, as well as redoing all their sculpts to be significantly more nuanced and more detailed. And then they have a structured way of doing it. You look into it more, but basically if you back it all, then you get the core minis redone for free, and if you back at a higher pledge level, then you get all the expansion minis done for free as well. There's no word yet on whether they are doing the monsters. They seem to be primarily redoing the heroes. I hope they do the monsters as well, but basically if that's the case, then this will have, you know, one of the weak spots of this game in terms of the miniature quality will be, you know, addressed, hopefully. So that will take a good game and make it even not better, but more visually appealing. Immersion is a factor. Again, look at those walls. I mean, that you cannot tell me that this game would be equally good and equally fun if those walls were flat. I mean, you can see over here, actually, we lowered one of these so we can see the board game. But I mean, this is the wall if you don't use these guys. Now, if you want to tell me that this is just as engaging, you're welcome to play that. I think that minis are, minis and immersion are second to gameplay, but they are incredibly important. I'm Jewish, religious, you know, you can see this thing over here. I've seen a bunch of my videos. There's this religious song that called Ashes Chayil, and this idea of, it's a whole idea of a woman of valor and whatnot, and it goes through this whole concept of beauty, and beauty is completely, beauty is secondary. Beauty is this completely overpraised character trait that is not important. That being said, it's an augment. At the end of the day, you want a woman of character, a woman of valor, a woman of, you know, noble traits and this and that. And then once you have that, beauty's great. Beauty's a great afterthought on all those things. Same with the board game. You need the bones to be good. You need everything you're playing needs to be incredible. And then the immersion comes, and then the great minis and the great, the walls, the lava, the whole thing comes after. But you need that. You need a good game first. So yeah, so I'm happy about the announcement about the better minis to add to the game. Other than that, my only critiques of the game, I mean, honestly, my critiques are minimal because they're based on what the game is. I mean, the game does have some swingy dice rolls. Sometimes, like, for instance, those specials that I talked about, you know, your characters have these two specials that are one-time use abilities. But if you miss, then your special is gone. You don't. It's done with. You can roll a little. You can roll lower than you were thought, and suddenly this thing you were counting on saved the game. That's a huge swing in the gameplay. So they do have things like that. But at the same time, that's the very nature of what this genre is. This genre is all about tactical planning, and you have to factor in the fact that you'll miss some, you'll win some. The enemy side too, they'll also miss some and win some. They'll also have those killer blows that they roll and miss on, and it works out in your favor. On the average, across the whole game, hopefully it balances out. But really, yeah, that's my midnight review of Arena the Contest. It's highly engaging, highly accessible. It's, you know, basically you can teach this once your kid knows how to read. I can see a 10-year-old playing this easily, picking it up and having an absolute blast. It's a perfect perfect, not perfect, but it's a great game. I highly recommend it. I'm sure I'll know more after another 5-10 plays, but as of right now, it definitely has a firm spot in my collection. That's basically it, and have a good night.